Hello guys and welcome to my new video. So today I decided to do a Resto Druid Mythic Plus guide. So this is going to be covering things like legendaries, talents, tiers, a bit of the gameplay, because there isn't a huge difference that happened to Resto Druid gameplay with tier 21. There's some minor changes, but I'll be covering things like I said, tiers, legendaries, talents, a bit of DPS as well, because DPS is becoming a bigger and bigger part of healer playstyle. Healers are recommended to output as much damage as possible, and judging the right moments when to DPS is really important. This is not going to be a DPS guide video, but it's going to encourage you to try and have a separate DPS build for easier Mythic Plus dungeons, or for Mythic dungeon trash packs that you feel don't really require that much healing. So let's first actually look at the talent builds. So the talent builds themselves for Resto Druids, they haven't really changed that much. The biggest difference to talent build changes is to do with tier 21. So first of all, tier 21 Force is extremely strong for 5-man. It's one of the reasons why I feel Resto Druids have become like one of the best Mythic Plus healers in the game right now, because of how the Force interacts with Mastery. It's super easy to use. Your Wild Growth almost feels like a super strong spell that you can use every 10 seconds, has a relatively short cooldown, can be used for when there's 2 or 3 people losing health. Like it becomes really strong. If you play Holy Paladin, it might be something you can maybe compare it to what Beacon of Virtue is, maybe not to the same extent, but it feels extremely strong depending on which legendaries you use and things like that. But this is probably a generic talent build that a lot of people will use. A lot of people are actually leaning towards Abundance, but Scenario Word is quite viable. Prosperity can be viable on different affixes and things like that. So there's a lot of different builds with legendaries and talents that is dependent on the affixes themselves. So if a person is using Moment of Clarity instead of Flourish, it doesn't mean that Flourish is bad, or doesn't mean that Moment of Clarity is bad. They're probably using it for a specific reason. Like for example, I tend to use Moment of Clarity for tyrannical keys, for high tyrannical keys where I feel that mana might be an issue. Now it's not uncommon to do a key with like 20 plus or something, where a boss might last 5 minutes plus. That's actually happens quite a lot. So, and you have to maintain like a 1 plus 1.5, 1.2 million HPS, and it can't be draining. So sometimes I end up using Moment of Clarity for big regrowth crits, which works really well with Abundance, because Abundance, for each rejuvenation you have active, the cast time of Healing Touch is reduced by 10%, and the critical effect chance of regrowth is increased by 10. Now you see the Healing Touch portion, it's still not recommended, even though you get instant Healing Touch because you have so many rejuvenations, because you should be using Germination. Germination is probably the one talent that's like you kinda have to use. I mean, Spring Blossoms, you can maybe get away with it, but Germination is just the way to use in Mythic Plus. So you're gonna have a lot of reduce rolling on everyone in your party, and you're gonna have like instant cast Healing Touches, but that's still not the most optimal way to do it. Regrowths, even though they have 1.2 second cast or whatever, depending on your haste, they're going to have 100% crit chance. On top of that, they also leave a hot on a target. A hot that lasts 12 seconds, and that hot contributes towards your mastery, and that hot is actually really quite important too, because a lot of the Resto Druid 5-man healing is to do about maintaining as many hots as possible on targets, because how strong your mastery is becoming. Now there's still a couple more talents that I want to cover. Abundance is strong. Scenario Word can be used when you need tank healing. Prosperity can be used for specific affixes. Displacer Beast doesn't really matter. Here, Feral Affinity and Guardian Affinity, it's all depending on the key that you're doing, on whether you want to do DPS. Feral Affinity is one of the best ways to do cat cleaving, which is a really good DPS source for Resto Druids. You'll probably most likely will look into getting a combination of legendaries. With cat cleaving, it is recommended to actually start using the Boomkin Shoulders, Lady in the Child. Moonfire deals 20% increased damage. and also to use Feral Ring, which increases the energy regeneration by 5% and maximum energy by 100 while in cat form. So this combination of two legendaries allows you to do a really good DPS in cat. First of all, you don't need to have these legendaries to do cat DPS, but these legendaries really allow you and make it much more fun. You just pre-hot, pre-dot, go into cat form and start DPSing. I'm not going to cover the cat cleaving DPS rotation here. Now, if you feel that you might need Guardian Affinity, because Guardian Affinity and Frenzy Regeneration can be really, really strong for Resto Druid, there is a bear cleaving alternative. For this, again, balanced Druid Shoulders. Moonfire deals 20% increased damage and hits a nearby target. And on top of that, you want to get Guardian back, the Fury of Nature. While in bear form, you deal 30% increased nature damage, nature and arcane. So that's your Moonfire, increased Moonfire damage. So what you do with this build is basically you stay in bear form and you Moonfire the target from afar. Just because your back makes you stay in bear form. So this is a legitimate way of doing DPS in high Mythic Plus, where you feel that you might need Guardian Affinity for like the next boss or something. After that you have Typhoon. This is all Typhoon, Mass Dangle, Mighty Bash. That's all up to the affixes. Typhoon is great for Sanguine and things like that. Cultivation, again, most people will tell you that Cultivation is probably the way to go, just because it gives you constant, like a backup heal. It gives you a constant backup. Once the people start dropping really low, it'll increase your healing, because again, of Mastery, it's going to apply a new hot on a person when they drop below 60%. So if they drop below 60% and you're like, oh, people might die, you just, you know, you put up hots, you put up rejuvenations, you might want to just go big regrowth, and your regrowth is going to heal for more because that person has a hot on them already because of Cultivation. Now, I'm not saying Incarnation cannot be used. Incarnation can be used if you feel like there is a specific part in the dungeon that you're going to struggle. For example, like Mariner in More Souls, it's a fortified week. You've been struggling with that ad for a while. You don't have the best legendaries. Your gear is not that great. And you're just going to kind of cheese it by using Tree. Like, it's a very niche scenario. You can get away with using Tree. My personal opinion, this is my personal opinion, I need to make sure of that. Cultivation for me just gives me a more balanced out healing, because I don't have to time my tree at the perfect right times, because sometimes I just use it and I realize the burst was only there for 2 seconds, everyone's alive, and I have like 20 seconds of Incarnation left and there's nothing to use it on, and I've kind of like wasted it. If you can use it properly, it can be used well. I just stick with Cultivation. It's just an easy talent. Germination, I feel, is the only one that's probably built in to Resto Druid healing that you kind of have to have, because again, 2 rejuvenations give you more mastery, and like I mentioned already, a lot of the Resto Druid healing in 5-man is building the mastery stacks, and those mastery stacks allow you to heal for way more. So, and then we move on to the, to be honest, I feel all of these are viable to a certain extent. Flourish is used by a lot of people. Moment of Clarity is used by a lot of people. I use it for, like I said, Tyrannical Keys. Stoneback can be used. Let's say, for example, you're doing more souls, you're doing the first boss, so there's really hard hits on the tank, and the tank feels like, maybe I don't have enough cooldowns for this, and maybe you can spec into this. I mean, you can do it, and it can help out a lot. But most likely, Moment of Clarity and Flourish would probably be the ones to go. So this is the build that I tend to use a lot. This is something that I use a lot. This is based on specific affixes. And on top of that, now we look at the tier and legendary builds. Now, tiers, we're looking at tier 21, we're looking at tier 19. Because tier 19 is still extremely strong in 5-man content. Unfortunately, you still have to farm 9-hold if you kind of want to do it. So let's cover the tier 19 2-set build. First of all, let's not look at my gear exactly, but first of all, you need to have tier 21 4-set. Tier 21 4-set is extremely strong. What it basically does is every time you wild growth, any person who needs healing will get Dreamer hot applied to them. It will be increased your Sarah's gift. You'll see this. Anytime there's a group taking a lot of damage, you wild growth and everyone's gonna have a hot on them. Everyone's gonna have increased healing on them. Your Sarah's gift is going to heal for a decent amount. And it feels like a really strong cooldown. So let's have a look at how tier 19 interacts with it. Tier 19 2-set by itself, just 2-set is really strong. Wild Growth grants you 4000 mastery for 7 seconds. Now we're going to the whole concept of mastery and mastery stacking. And stat priority. So you should be using the Resto Druid stat weights, which is an amazing weak aura. It gives you the best stats to use per boss fight, per dungeon fight, per raid fight. It's really, really, really strong. And it's not uncommon to see something like your mastery is twice as strong as your intellect. This is actually what I'm seeing right now. A lot of people are seeing something along 1.5, 1.8, 1.9, somewhere there. It really depends on your stats, but using the weak aura, you can see exactly how much your mastery is valued. For me right now, mastery is worth 2 points while compared to 1 point of intellect. So mastery is a lot stronger. And in terms of stats, the best stats for 5-mans, haste and mastery are probably the best ones you want to really use. Mastery, really strong heals, it allows you to heal for much more, and haste allows you to do it faster. So fast and strong heals is probably the key to 5-man dungeons. Now with tier 19 2-set, every time you Wild Growth has a 10-second cooldown. It gives you a buff for 7 seconds. Your tier 19 2-set will give you a buff of 4000 mastery for 7 seconds. Your Dreamer Hut, that's tier 21 2-set, is going to apply to people once you Wild Growth. It lasts 8 seconds. It can't be reapplied again, so it might even last more than 8 seconds. So now, and then on top of that, I completely forgot, you have the Wild Growth Hut. On top of that, you also have the Wild Growth Hut. So if you actually look at your spell book, you can see that your Wild Growth also applies a hut for 7 seconds. So think of this scenario where you have 2 of your rejuvenations, you have your Wild Growth Hut, and then you'll have your Dreamer Hut because people will be taking damage. So you're here around at 4 huts. You have 4 huts on that person, which is really insane. On top of that, you also have 4k mastery buff. So you can get up to, like, I don't know, it depends. Let's say you have 30% mastery. I have 28%. Let's say with the buff you get like 30%. You get more. That's going to increase your healing by like more than 100%. It really depends on how much mastery you have. But for me, as an example, when I have these 4 huts on the target, my regrowth will crit for around 714k, 700k. When I have those 4 huts on myself or on any of the targets, it's going to crit for 1.5 million. So you can see the big massive difference. And I'm not even taking into account the regrowth hut that you get from using regrowth. I'm not taking into account the cultivation hut that you get once the person drops below 60%. So yeah, you can have a lot of mastery huts or mastery stacks on a person, and that's going to, like, it can double your healing. It can more than double. It's insane. It can be really, really high depending on the amount of mastery you have. And like I said, mastery and haste is extremely, extremely strong. So the 2-set bonus is really strong. It gives you 4k mastery. If mastery is valued 2 points to 1 intellect, that's basically giving me 8000 intellect every 10 seconds. Now in 5-man dungeons, it's really hard to calculate the true effect of true power of tier 19 2-set, because in raids, you can say that you use your Wild Growth, or it has like a 50% uptime. If you have 50% uptime, that means you're getting around 4k intellect, because you get 8k intellect, but you only have 50% uptime, so you get around 4k intellect. Now in 5-man dungeons, you probably won't be doing that. You won't be casting it every 50%. You won't have a 50% uptime with this. But the problem also comes into the fact that you will be using Wild Growth when you need that healing the most, and getting 8000 intellect equivalent, which is what I get, because for me mastery is valued at 2 points, is insane for that burst amount, for that 7 seconds, stacking with a Dreamer Hut, stacking with a Wild Growth Hut, stacking with rejuvenations, maybe life boom, maybe cultivation. I'm getting like insane amount of healing for about 7 to 8 seconds, somewhere there, like really crazy burst. So it's really hard to determine the true value of tier 19 2-set. A lot of people will tell you, when should you switch from tier 19 to 2-set to, like, I don't know, to something else, to higher item level gear. they will tell you when you need more stamina or something along those lines. Because if you have a really low tier 19, your stamina might be low, you might not survive enough really high keys, or you might need more stats to do more DPS in your kitty form, in your bear form, or whatever. You want to get more stats, you want to get more stamina, you want to get more crit, more verse, and you want to do more damage. That's the kind of outline that you're looking at when you want to switch over from tier 19 to a higher. So this is the build that I'm actually using at the moment. I switch around from tier 19, but I actually start using the legendary chest. Legendary chest only affects the tier 21 4-set portion, which increases the Ysera's gift healing. Now, when I'm using the legendary chest and I'm pressing Wild Growth, again, Ysera's gift is healing for a lot for that period, because with the tier 21 4-set, when you cast Wild Growth, you have 100% chance to cause Ysera's gift to heal target 400% more frequently. And my chest, on top of that, is increasing that Ysera's gift healing. So I end up being, my Ysera's gift healing ends up being like top 3 heal in a dungeon, sometimes top 2. It really depends. It probably depends on your playstyle as well, but I'm seeing good Ysera's gift healing from this. And on top of that, I'm not stuck with using a lowish piece of gear. I get to use my helm that's off piece, or maybe I get to use Drape of Shame and things like that. So if you have like Drape of Shame is not the best, but I mean, if you have a really high item level gear and you kind of looking to get more stamina, more crit, more versatility for your DPS, it might be the way to go. So I am between these two builds right now, between tier 19 2-set and tier 21 4-set, and tier 21 4-set and the chest build. Now, it does not mean that's the only builds that are available, because you can also look into the Soul of the Forest ring. Soul of the Forest ring can actually... It's still a very, very good ring. Gain the Soul of the Forest talent. It's still a very good... It can be used for a lot of the situations. For a lot of people who don't know what... This was the main build with tier 20. A lot of people were using Soul of the Forest ring. And Soul of the Forest by itself, when you cast Swiftmend, which right now your Swiftmend will be 30-second cooldown, because you most likely won't be using Prosperity, you probably will be still using Abundance as a scenario ward, most likely Abundance. You won't have tier 22 set, which reduce the cast of Swiftmend, so your Swiftmend is going to be 30 seconds no matter what, most likely. So you're going to have this burst AoE healing available at every 30 seconds. But the point is, when you cast Swiftmend, you gain Soul of the Forest, increasing the healing of your next growth, rejuvenation by 200, or increasing the healing of your next wild growth by 75. So it's kind of one of those, what situation am I in right now? I'm casting Swiftmend, 5 people are taking damage, I'm gonna go wild growth. The tank is about to take a lot of continuous damage, the tank is full HP. I'm gonna cast Swiftmend and I'm gonna put rejuvenation on that tank, because that rejuvenation is gonna be 200% stronger. What if you're like, oh, the tank is like basically dead, the tank has about 10 million HP, it's gonna take me forever to try to get him or her up to full. I'm gonna press Swiftmend and I'm gonna go a really, really powerful regrowth. So with Soul of the Forest ring, you have this amazing tool that can be used for constant damage, for a big burst, big single burst heal, or like a big massive AoE heal from wild growth. So it can genuinely be a really, really good legendary as well. Soul of the Forest ring, Soul of the Resto Druid ring, which is still very, very strong. I end up using the chest and I end up using the Pridus. Pridus is very strong legendary. Valence is a very strong legendary. The difference between 5-man and raid scenarios for Resto Druids is that the shoulders and the legendary helm, which is very strong for Amatus Vision, and the Chameleon Song, which is very strong depending on the situation in raid scenarios, is not really that strong in 5-mans. You're not really looking at using Chameleon Song or Amatus Vision for 5-mans. So that's why you're kind of left with fewer options. You're kind of left with Pridus, you're kind of left maybe with Legendary Chest, you're left with Soul of the Resto Druid ring. You can opt in to use the belt, the Dark Tyrant's Advice, if you need to keep the tank at full HP, or if the tank is kind of messing up and you're like, oh, I don't want to spend that much time on the tank, I'm just gonna use the belt and I'm gonna use Life Bloom on them, and they're going to be relatively safe. The belt can work pretty well as well. These will probably be the main options that you would use in a 5-man scenario. Like I mentioned before, Pridus is great for really, really high mythics, where you might not survive, but at the same time you also have Bear Form, because Bear Form is one of the best things you can use. It's probably one of the best cooldowns the Resto Druid or a Druid has in the game, probably. right now. It's extremely strong. I mentioned before, Valence can be very strong. If you use it for burst scenarios, it can be really good. Now keep in mind that Valence is like, it gives you 5,238 intellect. But in 5-man's intellect, maybe you're like me, intellect is one of the worst stats. So if you look at Valence and the amount of stats it give you, it's not the same. Use the Resto Druid stat weight record to really find out the stats that you really need. Like for me, intellect is not great at all. I'll be looking to stack haste and mastery for a lot of the times in 5-man scenarios because he has such a big influence in my Resto Druid healing. Again, I can't recommend the weak aura anymore because it's so good. So like I mentioned, the legendaries, the tiers, the really strong mastery stacking, mastery stacks can be really ridiculous. Another point of using things like the legendary chest is to do, like I mentioned before, why would you want to swap over tier 19 2 set? Tier 19 2 set is extremely strong in 5-mans. DPS is becoming a bigger and bigger option in 5-mans. There's a lot more people trying to go and do DPS, especially for the keys that don't take that much, they don't require that much healing, and you should be trying to look into adding more DPS. And legendary chest technically gives you so much stats that is actually pretty insane. As a Resto Druid who's looking to do DPS, Mastery is your least wanted stat because Mastery increases your healing, and as a kitty DPS or as a bear cleaving DPS, you don't really want Mastery at all. You want every other stat beside Mastery. So this general advice, tier 19 2 set is extremely strong for 5-mans. Swapping it over is quite difficult to know the exact point of when to swap over. Resto Druids are doing extremely strong in 5-man dungeons. In terms of gameplay, it's very simple. I mean, all you're kind of doing is anytime there is any amount of damage coming in, you can wild growth. Wild growth as much as possible, basically, if you can. You can wait until 1 or 2 people are taking damage. You wild growth, you get the Dreamer Hot applied on them. At the end of the day, wild growth has a 10-second cooldown. The hot lasts 7 seconds. Dreamer Hot lasts around 8 seconds. If you use tier 19 2 set, that lasts around 8 seconds or 7 seconds again. So you're kind of set for those. After using wild growth, you're kind of set with the burst healing for until your wild growth comes back up. So you're relatively safe with using a lot of wild growths. Like I mentioned before, it doesn't change a lot. Your game style doesn't change a lot. You keep as many hots as possible on everyone. You wild growth when you feel there's damage needed. If you see, now this is quite interesting, if you have your grid or your healing bar set up in any way to show when a Dreamer buff is applied, you can maybe kind of delay, because it takes around like 2 seconds. I'm going to say it takes a couple of seconds from when you wild growth, your sales gifted healing is increased by 400%, until like Dreamer Hots get applied to everyone. So let's say 4 people are taking damage, you wild growth, it's going to take a couple of seconds until everyone has the hot. Now, you might feel in your mind that, okay, there's going to be continuous damage happening here, and I need to prolong that kind of healing. You might consider using Flourish a couple of seconds after you wild growth. So you make sure that the Dreamer Hot is applied on them, or on multiple people, and then you Flourish it, and you extend the Dreamer Hot, you extend the wild growth hot, you extend the rejuvenations, and things like that. This might be a little tip, but I mean, if there's no continuous damage coming, if you heal through the burst, it really doesn't matter, as long as the people are safe. Hopefully this was not too long and too boring, but I feel Resto Druids are doing really well. I feel Resto Druids are extremely fun in 5-man content. I feel tier 21 is really fun. I felt that tier 20 was very strong in 5-mans as well, but for the people who don't like tier 20 in 5-mans, they will definitely enjoy tier 21. Tier 21 is extremely strong, extremely easy to use. There's quite a few legendaries that are quite strong for Resto Druids. There are a lot of talent builds that can work. Like I mentioned before, Mythic Plus content is where you can choose talents depending on your playstyle, depending on your group, depending on your affixes and things like that. But these are just some of the builds that I use, some of the builds that I tried out. It does not mean that they're the best builds to use. It just means that I found a good use out of them, and you might. Test it out, see how it works for you. Thank you guys for watching this guide, and I'll see you next time.